Greetings, everyone, and welcome to our March Girl Talk, Stories of Trailblazing Women and Girls. I'm Madina Wahab, Curriculum Development Associate at Girl Up, and I am super excited about today's Girl Talk. We'll talk about the achievements of girls and women in history, as well as the incredible firsts and feats accomplished by girls and women today. Dr. Nina Ansary will kick off the Girl Talk by chronicling the achievements of trailblazing women from the past, women whose names might not have been recorded in our history books, but who are nonetheless trailblazing. Then we'll have two fireside chats, first with Kiara Nirghin, then with Kyzzhibek Batyrkanova, two individuals who are making history right now. Before we kick off the Girl Talk with Dr. Nina Ansary, I would like to remind you all to submit your questions to our speakers throughout the event in the text box. We'd love to pull a couple of questions from you, our audience, to pose to Kiara and Kyzzhibek, so don't forget to type up your questions and send them to us. And now, I'd love to welcome Dr. Nina Ansary, author, historian, and women's rights advocate. As a UN Women Global Champion for Innovation and a visiting fellow at the London School of Economics Center for Women, Peace and Security, she regularly presents work on the transformative role that women are playing in global affairs at multilateral conferences, think tanks, and universities in both the US and the UK. She is the author of Anonymous is a Woman, a Global Chronicle of Gender Equality, spotlighting the stories of women who were previously erased from history. Given Dr. Ansary's contributions as a women's rights advocate, she will frame our discussion today. So with that, it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Nina Ansary.
Here, and to continue our celebration of Women's History Month as part of Girl Up's Girl Talk virtual panel series, and to have the opportunity to highlight stories of trailblazing women and girls. This past year, despite the monumental challenges, there is still much cause to celebrate. Among the many hard-won victories, here in the US, we witnessed history in the making with the election of the first female vice president. The 2020 elections in the US also saw a record number of women who were elected to both Congress and state legislature. Elsewhere in the world, Ethiopia has now closed 70% of its gender gap and reached full parity in its health and survival sub-index. Ethiopia is now the first country to ever have a majority of women in its government, with 62% of women holding the country's national legislature. And Saudi Arabia has made groundbreaking progress as part of its Vision 2030. However, despite such monumental feats, we still have much work ahead of us, moving forward in our journey towards full parity and equality. In countless countries, the status of women as second-class citizens continues to be codified in policy and law. And in other countries, gender discrimination takes on a more insidious form, manifesting in stereotypical assumptions about women's capabilities. While we all know that stereotypical assumptions are nothing merely more than assumptions, more than false narratives, nothing more than popular myths, they do continue to hold women and girls back. Currently, some of the barriers facing women globally, 2.7 billion women are still legally barred from having the same job choices as men. Furthermore, women only have 3/4 of the economic rights that men have, not to mention 3/4 of the legal rights that men have. In fact, women are on equal legal standing with men in only 8 countries. Furthermore, insufficient loopholes and legalized discrimination continue to keep women vulnerable from workplace harassment, from workplace discrimination, and from child marriage. Globally, the global gender gap score stands at 66.6%, and to date, no country has achieved gender parity. But there is good news because overall, the quest for parity has improved from 108 years in 2018 to 99.5 years in 2020. which is why we cannot afford to be complacent in our assumption of linear progression when it comes to gender inequality, which is why it is very important for each and every one of us to continue to do our part in order not to just raise awareness, but to continue to challenge the status quo, because systemic change requires consistent work on parity and equality through targeted and collective action, including, but of course not limited to, effective policymaking, comprehensive legal reforms, gender budgeting, gender quotas, and collaboration and cooperation across different sectors, including the private sector and human and women's rights organizations. A crucial component of this advocacy entails shattering stereotypical assumptions. Now, while we can't just change stereotypes overnight, nor the psychology that underlies it, because it is in fact based on everyday observations, what we can do is change the reality that people observe. Take, for example, the appalling statistic that women occupy a mere 0.5% of recorded history. This yet is emblematic of another arena where, despite their monumental contributions, women continue to be kept obscure, unacknowledged, or entirely dismissed for their contributions. So highlighting the remarkable achievements of these women by giving recognition to the countless lives and legacies who not only deserve to be in our history books, but because exposure to role models has shown to directly impact young girls in terms of aspiration, leadership, and education. In fact, countless studies testify to the benefits of young girls being exposed to a plethora of female role models, including those provided by Stanford and Harvard recently, that have shown that on average, if girls were exposed to as many innovators as boys are, then the rate of female innovation could rise by as much as 164%. Now that's game-changing. Furthermore, amplifying the stories, the challenges, the experiences, as well as the triumphs of countless notable women in history who have been overlooked, inspire us to follow our passion, and are also important reminders that gender-based obstacles can be overcome, that gender-based assumptions are nothing more than false narratives, that centuries ago, even when opportunities were more limited, women from all parts of the world excelled in practically every field. Women like American scientist Eunice Newton Foote, who in the 19th century was the first person who discovered the principal cause of global warming. Yet she was not allowed to present her findings at the annual meeting of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, solely because she was a woman. So a male colleague had to take her place. Or South African activist Charlotte McSakey, whose accomplishments paved the way for some of South Africa's momentous political changes, including its first women's movement. A remarkable woman who has long been kept out of our history books and who has been pushed aside in official school and university curricula. So has American chemist Alice Ball, who discovered a treatment for leprosy. And what about Lise Meitner, 19th century Austrian physicist who led in the discovery of nuclear fission? In 1949, her male colleague won the Nobel Prize in chemistry for their shared discovery, and Lise did not, again, solely because she was a woman. And what about the present? Well, unfortunately, this trend continues, even in the 21st century, despite so much progress and advancement. There are countless women today that deserve to be household names, and unfortunately are not. Women like Stacey Cunningham, who in 2018 became the first female president of the New York Stock Exchange in its 226-year history. Women like Saudi Arabia's Rania Nashar, who in 2017 became the first female CEO of a Saudi commercial bank. Women like Belgium's Ursula von der Leyen, who in 2018 became the first female president of the European Commission. And what about the countless girls that we have among us thousands and thousands of girls who continue to pave the way despite their young age. Well, unfortunately, they should be household names, and yet they are not. Remarkable sisters from Bali, Isabel and Melati Witchson, who were only 10 and 12 years old when they started Bye Bye Plastics to support a ban on use of plastic bags on the island of Bali. To date, their efforts have not only resulted in keeping over 270,000 pounds of plastic out of the ocean, but most recently led to the governor of Bali signing a bill and passing a law forbidding use of single bags on the island, plastic bags on the island. And what about Mari Kopany, who was only 8 years old when she wrote a letter to then President Barack Obama asking that he meet with her and others during their visit to DC for a congressional hearing on the water crisis? And what about girls like Claudette Colvin, who 9 months before the arrest of Rosa Parks stood up against segregation in Alabama by refusing to vacate her bus seat in Montgomery? Claudette was only 15 years old. These and countless other inspirational women and girls inspire us to pursue our passion, inspire us to fight for justice, for equality, and more importantly, to never give up. Furthermore, they make us question what society would in fact look like today had women and girls been given equal opportunities all along. For all you amazing young ladies joining us here today, I have a simple reminder. Please know that today and every day, you have the ability to make a difference. You have the ability to transform your lives, your communities, and even the world around you. You have the ability to envision and create your own narrative, and you have the ability to change the reality that people observe. And it all begins that very moment that you commit yourself to creating a more equitable path, not only for yourselves, but for the countless women and girls around the world. So keep shining, keep doing the amazing work that you're doing. Never give up, always give back, never take anything for granted, and more importantly, never allow anyone to dim your lights. Thank you.
Innovator, and 2016 Google Science Fair winner. At 16, Kiara won the grand prize at the Google Science Fair and the Community Impact Award with her solution to address worldwide drought. Kiara was also recently named one of the United Nations Young Champions of the Earth and one of the 50 most inspiring women in tech. She'll be accompanied by our very own Girl Up leader, Maria R., who is president of the Girl Up British Columbia Coalition, for our first fireside chat.
Hi, Kiara. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here today and have this conversation.
Yeah, me as well. And I was very impressed to hear that when you were 16 years old, you won the grand prize at the Google Science Fair for an invention that increased food security and in drought areas. And I wanted to ask if you could describe how you got involved in creating inventions and how it felt to win the grand prize at the Google Science Fair.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think pretty much ever since I was younger, I've always been really interested in innovation. And I really think that the point of innovation is to have your ideas actually come into the world and have an impact on people. And I think that was really something special that I really was interested in ever since I was young. And I kind of looked at that when I was younger, kind of pre-college, in terms of what I could do with very obvious problems. And one of those was the drought. And that was something that was affecting a very large portion of the world and still is today. And I was really inspired by problems and understanding kind of the multifaceted nature of them. And even though I was really young, and even though I was probably one of the only girls in my kind of science classroom, I still was really passionate about problems and solutions and figuring out how I could solve them. And kind of with that, I really focused on the drought, and I kind of broke down the problem into something that a high school student would understand, which was the age I was at the time. And I just used as many resources that I could get my hands on, whether that was cold emailing professors or people that I could somehow contact in my community, and figure out how I could leverage the research into something that would actually have an impact. And so I was able to develop a polymer to help plants combat drought, and enter that into this global competition called the Google Science Fair, that's opened to any young person across the world that has really interesting ideas and kind of the passion to solve real world problems and make a difference. But yeah, I was really kind of grateful to have won the grand prize with that product, just because I kind of hacked together as many things that I could get my hands onto, even though kind of being young and being a girl were things that really stood in my way. But I definitely was able to leverage them for the better.
Wow, that's awesome. And I guess the beginning for every innovation is the eagerness to solve a problem. And that's definitely inspiring to other teenage girls out there who would like to be involved in STEM and make an actual difference in the world. And just how you are an inspiration for this upcoming generation. Do you remember reading any stories about girls and women in history when you were growing up?
I am so inspired by so many women around me that have done kind of science, technology, engineering, art, and math for so many years, and kind of that have kind of come before me that have really allowed me to get involved. And I think without so many women that really have showed me that I can get involved, I don't think I would be in the place where I am today. And so there's so many that even when I was that age, I could look up to and realize that their contributions have really allowed me to get involved in these spaces. And I think the really kind of important thing is that often as young girls that are in these spaces, you often don't hear them as much. You often kind of hear one kind of narrative, and that often doesn't include women and their contributions. And so I was able to really find those. It was very kind of specific to the science and innovation spaces, but I was really able to find them and find women that were in those spaces way before me that had done much more work in those spaces that I could look up to and realize that I was getting into a space that they had broken into long before I did.
Yeah, that's great. And would you be willing to share if there are any specific names that come to mind, or if there is like any individual that really inspired you?
Yeah, I think in terms of right now, one of the women that really inspire me is Malala Yousafzai. And so I've been really grateful to have worked with the Malala Fund a number of times in different projects. But I think she has really inspired me in terms of being a young woman and standing up for what you believe in. I think from my perspective, that really kind of translates into having the confidence to believe in the work that you're doing when everybody around you doesn't necessarily feel the same way. And I think that's something really important, because when you do get involved with projects or innovation or things that you're passionate about, a lot of the people around you might not be as supportive as kind of or kind of passionate about it as you are. And understanding that you have the confidence to stand up by yourself to pursue something that you're passionate about is something that I think is really important, and something that she really embodies.
Yeah, I love Malala as well. I think she's a great inspiration for our generation. And she's definitely not only making change, but also making sure that other girls know that they're also able to make change themselves. And I think that's the greatest thing someone can do, inspire someone else. And you yourself have become an inspiration for the younger girls out here. So I wanted to know if you have any advice to girls who want to change or solve problems in their own communities.
I think that's a great question. And I think that that's probably the hardest question in terms of young people getting involved in innovation. And I think that one of the most important things is that if you never if you never actually start that journey or ask the question in terms of the problem that you're trying to solve, you're never going to kind of think about a project or think about ways to solve it. And I think what's really important is kind of synthesizing what's available to you, what you're passionate about, and coming up with a way to kind of approach it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be science or biochemical based. It could kind of be creating your own organization or something like that that actually solves the problem, but solves it on a community level. And I think when you start looking at things that are affecting people around you versus kind of problems that you have no relation to, I think those are pretty interesting and easier problems to solve as a young person. But I also think that finding the right kind of resources to get started is really important. And that could be telling your teachers about it or telling your parents about it, and so that they can give you that support, because when you do get involved in innovation, it is kind of you by yourself unless you have like a team, and getting people around you that believe in you and can give you the support along the way is very important. So trying to find that at the start, once you're trying to get your problem, understanding it on the community level, and then finding people around you that can not only guide you, but when you do fail, which every kind of project fails multiple times, having those people to kind of bring you up multiple times is something that I found really important.
Yeah, I guess we can say that a project is like raising a child. It takes a village, and it's definitely very important to have the support of the people around you. And you already shared a little bit of how you started making your innovation, but do you think there are any specific steps that girls can take to solving the problems besides having the support and reaching out to people in their community?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think that one of the things that I would really consider is that when you approach an innovation, I think this idea of innovation is something that is really broad, and it can it doesn't necessarily have to be STEM based. I kind of like the phrase STEAM. And so that's science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And so one of the things that I've really been passionate about is understanding what you can do when you don't have many resources. And I think that applies to everybody in a variety of ways, just because not everybody has kind of teachers that understand or have the time to support you as you kind of do your own project in a very niche kind of area. And for me, that kind of happened with the drought. And so the problem that I was focusing on was something that did not have a lot of people in my community that I could leverage off of. And something that I found very powerful was just the internet and Google. I would spend kind of hours on it per day to reading through journals and research articles that I could access, and I really found kind of most of my research off of that, and my background and information that I could leverage was off the internet. And so I really think that with the ability for kind of young women to kind of access these resources, using them in a way to add to your research incrementally, I think that if you aren't kind of focused on research, that's fine. But I still think using resources like the internet and a variety of different kind of accessible tools, whether that kind of be research articles you can find that list a number of different places that you can find more research on the internet, is something that I have used, and I still use this to this day in college. But I think you don't necessarily have to have kind of professors you can reach out to in universities to get started in research. It's really as simple as just getting onto Google and understanding more about the problem and what's out there already.
Yeah, that's incredible advice. Thank you very much. And hopefully the girls out there will take it into consideration and start making meaningful changes within their own communities. And speaking of changes, what are the changes that you wish to see in society during your lifetime?
That is another great question. I think there's so many. I think one of the ones that I think I would like to see really soon is this is related to young women and their ability to not only get involved with innovation and kind of new ideas and kind of STEM fields, they're also able to lead and pioneer them. And I think that there's this shift that we're seeing where young women don't just think that they, or are able to believe that they belong in these fields, but are now able to go one step further and realize that they can lead them, they can make changes in them, and they can innovate throughout those fields. And I think that's a very important shift that I hope happens very soon, because we also see that hasn't happened. Not only do young women don't think that they can change them, but they don't even think they belong in them right now. And I think that shift between understanding that you can be involved versus changing the fabric of the industry or field that you're getting involved in is a shift that I'm really interested to see take place.
Yes, definitely me too. And how can we work collective to continue make changes and improving conditions for girls and women everywhere?
Yeah, and I think one of the most important things with this is really showcasing people's stories. And I think that's why I find events like this so inspiring and so necessary, which is for young women to kind of hear other people that are not necessarily in the field that they're interested in, but in other ones that have done really interesting things. Because I think when you collectively showcase different female stories and they're able to kind of understand the background and kind of more about that particular getting involved into that field, it allows us to apply those different ideas into our own lives. And I think something that I am really interested in is collectively coming together and just hearing more stories. And I think that regardless of what field you are in, whether that's kind of STEM or kind of in the arts, I think you still can find something really valuable about understanding people's stories and kind of seeing yourself in them. And I think that's what's so interesting, is that if you are in a field and you have been able to jump over the hurdle as a woman and you are in it right now, you can kind of act as a mirror to other young women that want to get involved. And I think that's super important, is not only being able to succeed yourself, but being able to showcase to other young women that don't necessarily see themselves in that same situation that you can do it, you can get involved, and you can really lead in the field that you're hoping to get in. So I think that collectively, that's a very specific thing that we can all get involved in.
Wow. I agree. I completely agree. And once again, thank you so much for the inspirational insight. And now we're going to be moving on to the audience Q&A. So a member of our audience asked, how do you feel about researches done before 2000 related to gender equity?
Yeah. Sorry, can you repeat the question one more time? I don't think I got it.
Yes, of course. The question is, do you believe in researches done before 2000 related to gender equity? But I guess we change that to like, how do you feel?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I definitely think that's a super interesting question, particularly because we're not quite sure the contribution that, or the diversity in kind of the research that's been involved kind of in that time period. And so I definitely, and you see this particularly at places like Stanford that have, as a university, have very important focuses on being diverse in terms of their research, in terms of their researchers on different projects, and kind of understanding that to really get research and kind of formulate hypotheses that are very targeted, but also relevant. You do need that diversity of researchers coming in. And so I think what's interesting is that I haven't actually looked at much research pre-2000. I was actually born in 2000. And so haven't really been exposed to a lot of the research then done in gender equity. But what I can say is that I do think that the research that you get now with a variety of voices, including more women in a field that highly includes their voices, is only going to be better. And so I'm not kind of specific to the research done pre-2000, but I know that something that's important is kind of how you look at researchers and how you kind of look at the actual equity in the people that are getting involved in these papers and projects.
Yeah, I agree. I think that nowadays the diversity definitely adds a little more to researches. And that was actually our last question, Kiara. Thank you so much for joining us today and giving us a little bit of our time and all of your inspiration and insights. It was great. I very excited that I got to meet you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maria. I'm super excited to haven't gotten the opportunity to chat to you. And thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. And now we're going to have Madina back up.
Thank you to both of you. Thank you, Maria and Kiara. There were so many really wonderful nuggets of wisdom in the chat. And I should add that I'm also a Malala fan. Viewers, I know all of you have your own leadership stories and your own achievements. For a chance to be featured on one of our channels, please submit your story using the button in the second pink box on this page. We'd love to learn more about your leadership journey. Please also remember to submit your questions for our next guest, Kyzzhibek. Find the pink colored question box and feel free to send us any of your questions. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Kyzzhibek Batyrkanova, Program Director at the Kyrgyz Space Program, which aims to assemble Kyrgyzstan's first satellite to be launched into space. Kyzzhibek is also a Tech Woman 2019 alumna hosted by Mozilla headquarters in Francisco Bay Area. She'll be accompanied by Tea, who is Club Director for the Girl Up Chicago Coalition.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us today. So you lead the space program in Kyrgyzstan, and you are working on assembling their first nanosatellite. You're also a champion for gender equality. So would you mind telling us a little bit about the work you do, what inspires you to advocate for gender equality?
Yeah, it's nice to meet you as well. Yeah, thank you for the invitation to join this panel discussion. Yeah, so we're doing a very ambitious work. I really love it, and I really love talking about it. So I, with the team of girls that we have, we are working on building the satellite, like assembling it, also establishing the space program from scratch in our country that has no infrastructure or any space industry. We don't even have some kind of aerospace engineering in our universities. So we are pioneers here in our country of Kyrgyzstan to do this job for the very first time since it has become a sovereign state. So we used to have a very rich space history once our country was a part of the USSR. And after that, when the USSR collapsed, unfortunately, our country wasn't able to save some of the legacy. And our team is going to become pioneers, and we hope to establish some kind of a space industry here in the country. So now we have a team of 8 girls. So I'm the oldest in the team. Other girls, they're of a college age, and they work with us part-time. So we do conduct courses as well. And we also taught the whole team to code, to do 3D models, basics of the satellites. Well, we will be working with nanosatellites of the CubeSat format. So we, I think, have accomplished like 50% of our mission, I believe. So if we talk about the work from the very scratch, we started from the beginning without even the knowledge of where to buy the components, where to test, whom to write. And nowadays we already work with the educational satellite and the engineering model of the satellite. Well, we are going to be working with it next month. I guess we'll start it. And after that, yeah, I guess we'll be thinking of buying the launch surveys and our flight model. So we are very excited. So much to do in the future.
Yeah, that sounds really amazing. So your team sounds like it consists of a lot of talented young women. So how is working with this group of people on the satellite differed from work environments that you've been in the past?
Yeah, I believe that when you have a girl-only team, the environment is pretty different from what you have, for example, in a corporate organization. So we're trying to be very friendly, very supportive. We're trying to understand what motivates us. So why are we in this team? And I think, moreover, it's important to know that I think all of us are driven by the mission of our program. And I can really see that people really like their job. They really believe in what they're doing. And I really like working in such a team because I believe I have never really worked in a corporation or an organization like that is pure business. But I think I wouldn't really like it because many of corporations, I believe, that are purely about business, they lack the mission, like people for people. And I really love what we do because I think it's something that brings benefit not only to you as you grow together with the team, but also your beneficiaries. And I think you can really see it in our relationship as the team. So we also grow. And I guess because we are small and we can relate to probably each other's problems as women, I think we become more understanding and we have more insights, like when we speak about them, we discuss them, and it helps us really to advance in our job and in our personal development.
Yeah, so now looking at this from more of a personal perspective, how does the work you do fulfill your passion and purpose, and what goals do you have for the space program and yourself in the coming years?
Yeah, that's a very good question. In fact, so I think this type of work directly fulfills my purpose. So from the early childhood, I was thinking that I wanted to be a volunteer in an international organization like UN. And after that, when I found this program, when it just was established, I thought, well, it's a wonderful program to start some educational initiatives. So as we did in our program. And I was really happy that my work could be connected to education, and specifically to the education of girls and women. And I think this what really forces me to wake up every day, because when I remember about the mission and what we do for our society, I get very excited, fulfilled with the energy, and I'm really happy about that. Because I think when I was younger, I couldn't believe that I will have a job that inspires me. Because looking at the generation of my parents, they were really tired from the work, and I can say that I get tired sometimes, but this is another type of tiredness. So I get very excited. Even though I'm tired, I get very happy when the job is done and when we see some results after we educate girls and women with the help of our program. And I guess the goal that I and my teammates also have in terms of being in space program is to see the opportunities and probably to seize them, because I think in our country to be a woman in STEM or in STEAM is very difficult. You don't really get a lot of support because it's an emerging field. And I guess for me and for the girls, the top priority is to become more self-confident in this area, because I think sometimes we still doubt ourselves whether we are good or not to be engineers. So this is the first goal that we're trying to achieve. And the program as well is trying to build the role model. So the goal of the program is to establish us as the role models and to show girls in our country that we're capable of doing anything, and building the satellites as well.
Yeah, so you mentioned there's not really, you didn't have a lot of representation, and now you're trying to change that. So who are your role models, and how have they impacted your life when you were growing up, and how have they shaped who you are now?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question, because I frequently think about that. Because I was, when I was small, when I was younger, I think we didn't really have a lot of women as role models, especially in our country, especially in the engineering field. So it was really hard to imagine a woman working in aerospace industry. Therefore, I think we tried to have some role models, and mostly we had role models, politicians. So the first role model I had was the former president of our country, Rosa Otunbayeva. So she was, I think, a president of our country for 2 years. And I think she's a really inspiring person to look up to. And then when I started working in this program, I think around 2 years ago, probably, I read an article about also a Kyrgyz woman who works in the UK. So she's a researcher in the University of Bath. And she is a woman from our country who represents STEM and research. And I was so happy to get to know her. And then we also got to know each other in person, and she's the woman that I really look up to, because she, I think, has done so much. She progressed so much. She's got so many awards for her work, and I think she's a true role model for every girl in our country who wants to do science. So I'm really happy that now this area is also developing, and now we have some role models that can inspire us.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're seeing a lot of advancement when it comes to representation. So what would you say to girls that don't live in big cities, that may not have the same opportunities to pursue the goals such as you have? What is your message to them to achieve what they want?
So at first, I believe, well, of course, it's really hard to do, especially when I think of our country, because of many social norms, right, that we have to face. But the first thing I'd suggest them is to find groups of people, or I even say when I deliver presentations, I say like, reach us, so we will support you in every endeavor, right, in every journey you wish to take. So it's really important to find a group of people who will support you in your community, who will also help you to achieve your goals. So it may be your family, some family members, or probably your friends at school, your teachers. So you should find someone who can help you to plan certain things, to access certain information. So I think it will really be helpful. And if you have an opportunity, find information about some organizations that support women and reach out to them, because I believe that our community is really helpful, because I think nowadays women really want to lift women, and they're very supportive of each other.
Yeah, so that is pretty much all I have in store for you right now. We should be getting a question from the audience in a few moments, but is there anything else do you want our listeners to know?
Well, it's very intriguing. Yeah, I guess, yeah, I'm not sure right now. Yeah, maybe just have a question.
Yeah.
Just when it comes to science, yeah, there is so much to talk about that you get real excited.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot when it comes to the field of STEM and STEAM. This is one of the questions from one of our listeners. So what is the role of science in bringing people and countries together?
I think it has a significant role, because even if we look at our own example of how our program emerged, so we have no specialists here, no infrastructure, no industry. Nevertheless, we were able to progress with help of our mentors who come from all around the world, and they're so eager to help us progress. And that is when I understood that people who work in science, they are really global citizens, and they are the people who really connect to people overseas. So I think it's amazing. So this was my first international work experience, when we met so many people who were willing to share their advice and experience with us, even without knowing who we were. So they were just basically reaching out. So based on our experience, I would say that science and technology in general, they play a very important role in bringing countries together, because they accelerate this process, I believe. And I'm really happy that nowadays we are able to use these modern technologies and benefit from them globally. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us some of your time and insights. I think it was really insightful for both myself and everyone listening. So now we are going to be having Madina come back up on stage to close off. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation. I also enjoyed it.
Thank you to Kyzzhibek and Tea for a truly inspiring conversation. And thank you to all of you who joined us today for this Girl Talk spotlighting trailblazing women and girls, with Nina highlighting the stories of women in the past, and with Kiara and Kyzzhibek, but also Maria and Tea achieving amazing feats through their work today. We know that all of you who are watching are also doing important work in your communities, and that you are also trailblazers, paving the way for future generations of women and girls to lead and make history. So tell us your stories as well. To all of our Girl Up Club leaders and community members who are watching right now, we want to hear how you are leading in your communities and making an impact. For a chance to be featured on Girl Up's channels, follow the link in the Take Action window on your screen and let us know what you're working on. There are only a few more days left in March, but I'll also go ahead and plug in our March Club Challenge. So if you haven't already looked at that, please do so. And don't forget to mark your calendars for our next Girl Talks in April and May. In April, we'll host a climate-themed Girl Talk around Earth Day, and in May, we'll focus on mental health and self-care. So thank you again for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.